Okej, då kör vi igång. Hjärtligt välkomna tillbaka till trappscenen här på West Pride. Jag heter Alexa Lundberg och jag är konferencier. Innan vi drar igång den här programpunkten så skulle jag vilja säga att ni är hjärtligt välkomna om utrymme ges i slutet av varje punkt att ställa era frågor. Om ni är här så gör ni ju det då naturligt såklart, man räcker upp handen. Men om man är med via chatten då ställer man sina frågor i chatten så ställer vi dem vidare sen till presentatörerna. I den mån som det finns tid och möjlighet att svara. Okej, då ska vi se. I switch to English because I can't speak English today. This session is held in English. And it's Volvo Group, which will be discussing how to be a more inclusive colleague. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, welcome. Today we are representing Volvo Group, and we will be talking about how to be a more inclusive colleague, and we will give you a seminar on diversity and inclusion for real. On the stage today, you will see the three of us. My name is Özgün Yılmazok. I am the global co-chair of Volvo's LGBT network, which is called V-Eagle. And I have my colleagues here, Torsten and Martin. They are the co-chairs for V-Eagle Sweden, and they will take the stage right after me today. And we will be representing Volvo Group. So let's start with our first slide, which comes a bit late, I think. Okay, so our agenda today is basically we will talk about diversity and inclusion in Volvo Group and introduce V-Eagle to you briefly. And then we will talk about misconceptions about sexual orientation. And in the end, we will give you some tips on what you can do as a colleague to be more inclusive. And we will close with a summary and Q&A. Diversity and inclusion are big parts of Volvo's everyday life. They are included in our code of conduct, so it's in the very base of Volvo's material, and they are very much aligned with our values, as you see here, like trust, passion, change, and performance. We believe that as we care for diversity and include people in everyday work life, then we will perform better and the people will trust us more and they will have more passion for their job. So it's a one-on-one connection with our values and diversity and inclusion. As V-Eagle, our mission in Volvo is based on two different things. First of all, we are providing support to LGBT plus employees within Volvo. So we are creating a sense of community for them to join within the company. And we are also we are getting their experiences within the company. If they feel they are discriminated or harassed, they can always come back to us. We are their connection to HR in this case. The second mission we have is to give feedback to Volvo about the LGBT situation in the company. The feedback we get from our members and allies, we take it to the company for improvement of the situation in terms of LGBT issues. As a network, we have global presence within the company. And we have 6 main chapters in the main countries that Volvo have factories in mostly. We have a big chapter in Sweden, but we have other chapters in US, Brazil, France, Poland, and UK. The countries you see here as blue, we have members, either members or allies, and the yellow ones are where the chapters are. Today, Volvo's V-Eagle network has 183 members and 622 allies spread in 25 countries. Allies are important for us. That's why we do not just accept LGBT plus people in the community, in the network. We also open it for allies in the company. Allies are non-LGBT people within the company who join our network and support us, spread the word, increase our visibility. And they are also giving us very valuable feedback that sometimes LGBT people do not experience some things directly firsthand. But allies sometimes are better eyes for us to see the things around that we cannot see. So it's always good support for us to have straight people joining our network, spreading the word, and then bringing feedback to us as well. So before we start getting into details, we will just open up a question and answer session with you and the live audience online as well. If you could just go in menti.com with your telephones and use the code there, up you see 16017693. And if you could answer this question, we would like to see how much you know about the basic concepts of LGBT plus percentage for this question. We ask you, what is your perception of the percentage of LGBT plus people in society? Let's see what the audience thinks first, and then we will talk a little bit about that. As I've said, online audience can join as well, and I see that they're joining too. So we can get more response on the answer. I see that most of the responses are concentrated around 8 to 12%. Probably that's the most expected for now. And the others are quite evenly distributed. Let's see what actually the number is. Okay, do I need to press again? Okay. I think it takes time to get the slides in. So maybe I can start speaking while the presentation comes up. Normally, what we accept today is the numbers around 4 to 8%, roughly considered to be around 8%. So most of the answers we got from you was right on the target in this case. But this is the perception that we have today. This is the perception that we had until today. I can say, I should correct myself, 8%, roughly 8% of the global population. But actually, more recent research with younger generation people, younger people, especially the ones born after 97, the millennials we call, they are more considering themselves to belong to the LGBT plus population. That number has increased from 8% to 20% for younger generation of people. That means that this younger people, they feel more belonging to that group, and also our definitions of LGBT have also changed lately. We have a wider perspective of seeing things now. We have now been introduced to concepts of cisgender and non-binary and very different things that we weren't talking about before. So the perception has changed as well, and that also shows us that we need to put more focus into this subject, because the coming generation is a bigger part of that LGBT community, and we need to make space for them. Now another question for you. Using still the same code that you had entered before, could you try to define what diversity is for you with one word? Like you have three words, you can enter 3 different words. With one word, what reminds you of diversity? What gives you the idea of diversity? Which words would you use to define diversity? Let's see what you think first before explaining. As you keep on submitting responses, we will see them on the screen. Let's wait a bit more. While you keep on submitting, I would start concentrating on some of the words. Where we see in a few of them, we see differences coming up. in a couple of different ones. I think that is the first one that defines diversity. Diversity means difference. The differences we have in age, in gender, in sexual orientation, national origin, religion, ethnicity, our educational background, many different things that make us different from each other, and that makes us diverse in this case. That's what we call diversity. So if you have a lot of people from different backgrounds, different characteristics coming from these different areas, then you have a diverse group of people. And other words to concentrate on this could be variety, which is basically the same thing with diversity. And when you look at the words, you also see colors, ethnicity, variation. These are all defining diversity in a good way. And when you take freedom, I think it's also, at the end of the day, is connected to diversity, because as diverse you are, then the society is more free, actually, as you keep room for diversity. Let's see this topic from inclusion perspective. What do you think inclusion is? In the same way, if you could submit some responses, let's see what inclusion means to you. We started to see responses. Okay, in terms of inclusion, I think the one that we need to focus on is the one in the middle, which is the right thing to focus on and is the right response. I think the right explanation for inclusion. Inclusion is basically acceptance. Where you have diversity, where you have diverse group of individuals, the moment you accept them, the moment they feel accepted, they also feel included. So basically, inclusion is making diverse people feel comfortable in a group, feel that they are included, feel that they are empowered, so they are not cast out. And when you talk about inclusion, sometimes you should differentiate. You can have a very diverse group, but maybe in the very diverse group there is a group of people who are the only empowered people, and they lead the group, and the others, although they are diverse, they have no power, they have no say, they don't feel like they belong to the group. You still have a diverse group, but you don't have an inclusive group then. That's why it's good to differentiate these things from each other. When we look at the other words, we see acceptance. That's also very similar. Belonging is also a very right word when we talk about inclusion. Inclusion is a sense of belonging. When you have this, then you're included. So if we compare the two, what we can say briefly is diversity is about the numbers. The number of different qualities you have in your group. You have some older people, some younger people, some men, some women, some gays, some straight people, an Indian person, a French person, a Swedish person, a Hungarian person. Then you have a very diverse group. Diversity is about how many number of different people you have in your group. But inclusion is about the impact, how you integrate these people in your group so they feel like they are a group. Nobody feels like I'm out of this group and nobody cares about me here. So inclusion is basically creating this impact. What we can summarize is that there is a quote that diversity is like being invited to a party, and inclusion is to be invited to dance with the group. So that's the main difference between these two concepts. After this short message, I will leave the floor now to Martin, my colleague, and he will walk you through the misconceptions, but he will start with a question first.
Exactly. Hello, everyone, also from my side. So Özgün was already testing his Menti Meter with you, and I think it works well. So I'm going to ask you when you're at work, how do you how does it look from an LGBTQ perspective? What do you think? Then we have different preset answers here. Is it more homophobic? Is it accepting? Somewhere in the middle? What do you think from an LGBT plus perspective? I guess here we have, I mean, this one is a great result that most of you feel that it's an open and accepting work environment. Now, I'm not sure how diverse our audience is. If most of you are part of the LGBT plus community, then of course this is a great result. If we have then the audience more from the heterosexual community, then that it could of course be the way you feel the work environment is. Maybe you feel, well, I'm inclusive towards the LGBT plus community, but then maybe your coworkers might not have the same feeling, because that's what just Özgün was highlighting. To measure inclusion is really difficult, like it's your personal feeling. Maybe when we're standing here, I feel super included, but it can be different for Torsten. So it's everyone's own perception of the environment itself. So, but overall, I guess that's a great response. And I guess if there are some questions on that, we take this later on. But we still see that there's also the homophobic and hostile. I mean, that's an answer, of course, we would not like to have. And then if that is coming from people from our community, then this is even more difficult to act on. If this is a person now that is not so open with their own sexual orientation or their gender identity, then it's even more difficult to make the work environment inclusive without the support from others, without the support from the company. On how this could be done, we take later on in the next stage of the presentation. But before we go, now I take it slow. Reflecting on the question before, here you see two results that we have from our internal network, the Weagle network, where we ask our members, how do you see your work environment? So on the right side, you see a graph where actually 50% of the members in our network in Volvo, they feel they have an open and accepting work environment. But then we still have also members, as just the answers that you gave, they see a more hostile and homophobic work environment, and that is where we have to act on and to drive then the engagement in those parts towards a more inclusive work environment, that those members that we have, that they can live openly with their colleagues. They do not need to fear to be open. And the left side, the 47%, if you remember, we were saying that we have around 200 members on a global level, but only half of them are actually open with their colleagues. So half of the members that we have in our network, they are not open today. With some great activity, we got some members to open along the way while they were working within the Volvo Group, but it's really difficult to, once you're in the closet, to open yourself up to the colleagues, especially if you work for such a long time in one company. Then it's more like, it can be like, oh, well, now it's the feeling, it's that, I try to live with that. So we really try also when we get new people joining the Volvo Group, that they understand that our policies are to be who you are, that they get to know to this LGBT work early as possible, that they know that there is a safe environment, that they can, if support needed, that they can contact us. And because of that, we created 4 years ago a guide for sexual orientation and gender identity that initially was helping managers to create a more inclusive work environment. what they should do in case someone comes out to them, one of their team members, how they could support the gender transition, or an employee that needs then name change and email change, whatever. So that we have created, and based on that, we have now those misconceptions that I want to go through with. And it's 5 misconceptions that I'm presenting, and the first one is that it's a private matter. People often have the misconception that, well, what is at work, and my private life, I don't need to bring that to work. Like what I do in my personal free time is nobody's business. But that is often really difficult to make the change because we believe it's more overlapping. I mean, let's say now there's the Pride Parade on the weekend. I'm joining there. Of course, makes me super happy. So on Monday when I go to work and my colleagues ask me, what have you done on the weekend? If I'm not so confident with my sexual orientation and my identity, I wouldn't maybe mention this to my colleagues. So I would hide this. I would hide my gender identity, that I'm gay, that I participated in LGBT Pride Parade. Another example is if you join a new colleagues, new job, they of course want to know maybe what have you done in the past. Like if you're from another country, okay, what have you done there? And then have you moved alone? Do you have a partner? Then they often make the assumption that you have an opposite sex partner. So it's really difficult to have a split of your personal life and your business life. So that is one misconception. The next one is that sexual orientation is a choice. That question we often get asked on when did you decide to be gay? But now I want to, do you have ever thought, if you reflect now on yourself, have you ever thought about your own sexual orientation or gender identity? That goes maybe more to the straight audience. And you maybe reflect on that you never really did, because it's nothing that you should. Like your identity is how you're born. That is who you are, and you don't need to change that. A lot of people, when they think, well, you just decided one day or sometime that you're homosexual, they often forget, why would I choose to have a life with so much negativity, that I'm discriminated in several countries, or the fact that a lot of people from our community commit suicide rather than deciding to be straight. So sexual orientation is not a choice. It's truly a part of who you are. It's genetics. It's like my hair. I have brown hair. I'm born with brown hair. Of course, I can dye it, but it always remains brown. Blue eyes, nothing I can change. So maybe it's more that one day you can accept your sexual orientation and gender identity. That's maybe more a term we can use, but it's definitely not a choice. The third misconception is that there are no reported complaints. And I must say that I had this misconception as well. I'm originally from Germany. Germany is a bit, where I was working in Munich, it's a bit more conservative. So there I was aware, okay, the situation isn't as good. When I moved to Sweden 7 years ago, I started working at Volvo. I had a great team. Everything seemed super. Then I joined the network, the Vigal network, and then I have seen the figures that half of our members are not open with their colleagues. And because I never heard about it. But the case is that a lot of people, they do not report when something negative is happening. When there are jokes happening during fika, or some people, they make bad comments behind your back, nobody or rarely people act on them, that they speak up and say something to level down this environment, that it will not happen again. Because if you think on yourself, maybe you have witnessed at one point in your life, either working life or private life, that there was a moment where you should have maybe acted on. And then question, have you acted on that? If it was at work, have you reported this to your manager or to HR that you mitigate the result to have it again in the future happening? And I have witnessed in the office sometimes some negative part, but that was when I came first here and then I didn't act on it. But since I have seen the figures, I always point this out if I see misbehavior, jokes, whatever, because otherwise those people continue to discriminate the minority. Not only talking now about the LGBT community, any negativity, comments or whatever. The fourth misconception is that if people hide their sexual orientation, it's their choice. But often the choice is taken from them. They hide their sexual orientation out of fear, reactions of their colleagues. Maybe it's the social non-present acceptance of the LGBT community. You live in a country where you have no protection by law. Then of course I also wouldn't come out and say that I'm homosexual. When I was with I have a partner, and when I was with him in Egypt on a vacation, we were also a bit skeptical how open can we show ourselves there in a country where our communities are very well protected. So their hiding sexual orientation the decision is taken from us. So one reason can be that we hide our sexual orientation because of our fear of career steps. There is the possibility, of course, shouldn't be there, that you imagine, well, if I come out to my manager, then I will never get promoted. I will not get any projects that are connected with countries where homosexuality is a problem. So, based out of fear, a lot of times it's hidden. And the last one is that dealing with the subject will be controversial. So that, we shouldn't talk too much about this. It's a sensible topic, especially not at work. It's too personal. It's nobody's business. But it's our social responsibility to create an environment where everybody can be their true themselves at work, but also outside of work. And as Özgün was saying, 20% of our next generation is part of our community. So we have to take a social responsibility to talk now about this topic, that they have later on in the next 5 years a better start in any company they want to work in. That the company that they're working in, they can be their true themselves. That was it for my part. I think now I hand over to Torsten.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Martin and Özgün. And now we are coming to the part where we talk about what we all can do, both as a society, but also as colleagues within the company, to be more inclusive. And I think we saw it in the results and the misconceptions. There's a need for that. There were, from my perspective, 2 answers to many on the homophobic part, because it should be 0 in the future, hopefully, one day. And I think we can all take part in this and also look into how can we work on this, being more inclusive and erasing homophobic environments. And as we see here now, it's 5 different parts we can touch. Some are already mentioned by Martin there. And that's the one point with the rule out the inappropriate humor, because it's always easiest to stay with the group. Let's say if we are a group of people taking a fika, as we like to do here in Sweden, some people start to joke. It's always easier to be part of the group, to decide not acting against this joke and join in the laugh, for example. But then we will not change anything. So we need to act and react on negative comments, on jokes, on humor that is inappropriate, just to make a change, and also to create the awareness or widen the awareness that this can hurt and damage feelings in that case. And part of this is also very important, like you said, Martin, when you came to Sweden in the beginning, you heard these and didn't act because you didn't know how to act, maybe in that case also. But then for us getting the social responsibility to deal with it and work on it, because members of our community will be very sensitive to negative comments. I remember comments of my family, for example, from 2004, which is soon to be 20 years ago, just because you're longing and waiting for positive comments in that case, which are not coming or were not coming back then. So that is just like stuck with us and with the members. And I think that's very important. Then if someone would have told against it, that would have stuck with me as well in a very positive way. So therefore I think it's quite important. The second part, rule out homophobic insults and behavior. This is even wider, and this is also connected to language. I know we talk about that a lot also in an international company where we have different language backgrounds. I guess you can hear that all of us are not English as the mother tongue, which is quite obvious. But then it's also the question how it's perceived and how do individuals listen to different words. Mats and I had a discussion actually at one of our factories regarding how to refer in the Swedish society and in the Swedish language to our homosexual colleagues. And is it okay to say gay or is it not okay? And thinking about the paragraph here where you see that's so gay, which is mostly meant in a negative way in the nowadays society. But then also depending on where you are, this can be very positive. Or back in the days, now almost 100 years ago, gay was a very positive feeling. It was a joyous, joyful, bright feeling you could create, and you had gay happenings, which were the fantastic places you want to be at. But nowadays, it's most likely meant in another way. And that's something we have to be aware of, especially in an international environment, as we have both in society here in Gothenburg, but also in the company we are representing. That is quite important there. And there we want to also raise the awareness to think, talk inclusive, rule out the insults and behavior. We are doing this internally with a code of conduct that we are mandatory to follow, and that can also be reported if you might say so. There are whistleblower apps if you want to stay anonymous, which I think is quite important, and I will come to that in a short while here later on. So I think all of us heard about the Me Too campaign. Time is flying. I think it's 5 years ago now, 2017-ish. It was. Don't count on my numbers now, but it's somewhere there. And there was harassment, and the campaign's really important to be raised for many groups on the biggest scale for women. But there was also harassment on homosexuality, transgender, and a wider range of minorities. And that's also important to think about that. How can that be erased from society? There again, not only for homophobic behavior, but in general harassment in workplaces, in public places. And there, as I said before, we have some guidance within Volvo Group that we can also rely on as employees. If you don't know how to act, for example, there's a guidance to be used. Another part that we can all do is supporting an coming out process. And supporting means also giving trust, offering support if needed and if wished for, and listening to the person in question in that case, because it's a huge step to come out to someone. It's a huge step to trust someone. So you should not rush your colleague or your friend or family member, whoever comes out to you, to come out to others in that case, because there it's very sensitive. Every person has its own kind of speed or schedule in there, which steps to take, and just like ask and offer support where needed in that case, and never out someone else. I think that's the most important takeaway from here, that it's the person's choice to out themselves to others in that case, and just feel honored to be trusted with such a huge step actually. So that's one big part. And then the next part also there, I would say the same framework, support in gender transition. If you have friends, family, or colleagues in your closer area, or like struggling with gender transition, for example, maybe opening up to you there again, be honest about it, but then also offer the support. And there are sometimes some practicalities behind it, and that's when we now come from the company perspective. Özgün mentioned that just briefly before, just like there are name changes involved, HR systems to be updated, email addresses, the change to be kind of now in a process matter implemented. You somehow, when you change email addresses and names, you have to go public in a way, because you need to inform your colleagues that you want to be referred to in another name and in another gender. And all these steps and questions and practicalities need to be taken into consideration, and then the pace that the person in question also wants to. Because even if you as a manager want to be like super supportive and say, okay, that's great, we do this in 2 weeks, and then we have another week, and then we have the HR update in 4 weeks, and then everything is done. This might be stressful, overwhelming, and just shocking, and not possible to determine for the person. So always ask what speed and pace is needed and required, and what support is needed. Be there, be open-minded, and just like, yeah, support in the best way. So there we come to a short summary and just additional tips in there. How to be supportive. Now I talked a lot about support and about the sensitivity that members listen to comments, both the negative and the positive ones. So the first one is let others know that you are supportive, and that can be done quite easily, if you might say. So maybe Martin took the Pride Parade as an example, what you have done for the weekend. If you have a fika on Monday, just mention that you went for the Pride Parade and it was a fantastic feeling, and that you think it's great that we can fight for the rights and so on, because then someone in your team or in your environment might listen and hear, okay, oh, that person is inclusive. I can maybe open up to that person in the future. Or talk about, like we mentioned here, the example is about same-sex marriage that has been discussed in Australia, that was for a referendum in Switzerland last year again, just like picking up news and topics from the media to do so. The second part, talk inclusive. Also something Martin was into when it comes to coming from another country, coming to a new event, new group of people. If you don't know about the others, let's say family life, sexual orientation, gender identity even, just open up and talk neutral. Either use the name if you know the name, or use gender neutral pronouns, or the he, when you talk about the partner, for example, in question, refer to as a partner, or add like the him or her in that case, so that you show directly and give a sign, okay, I'm opening up for this and I'm welcoming to whatever lifestyle you have in that case. And I think that's quite important, and also maybe challenging in the beginning, but if you get used to it, you can really make use of it and really make a change and a difference for those people in question. I think the third one we have mentioned several times now, act on negative comments and then homophobic behavior. So that's nothing we can accept in nowadays society, and that's something we have to fight for. And I think that's both on the private level, the society level, company level, group of friends, whatever you're interacting with in that case. And the last one, and I think that's the most important one, to offer support. Whoever is opening up to you with any question or thought they have, just like offer support and be open-minded and listen. I think the listening part is quite important, because if you have an open mind and an open ear, you can do quite a lot of things to change. So, and by that we come to the, let's say, open part with the question and answers to discuss, both online for you behind the screens. Feel free to put chat questions to us. We are all of us online on the mic, at least, and also for all of you. Feel free to ask questions. There's a microphone from the technicians here if needed. So that's something we can offer. Any questions in the audience or on the chat? No chat questions. Oh, sorry. Everything crystal clear. That's perfect. I have no idea what time it is, to be honest. There's no watch or something. Or at least I haven't detected it yet.
Anything you want to reflect on
Okay.
also, not just questions, anything you want to comment on that you've seen so far?
We have mics here if you want to reflect or ask questions. Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Also super.
what?
Seems to be also super. I mean, maybe it was crystal clear what we said, or
I think that was the case, actually. But perhaps you have some some last words. That sounds awful.
Final words to
Concluding arguments for your program.
Yeah, I can say one part, and that's maybe out of a personal perspective, because now we are representing Volvo, but we are also very proud of being able to do so. We had now this week several sessions with different topics. Actually, this is only one of this at Volvo Group with our colleagues. Got really great feedback and support from there, and also that is one part to widen the acceptance we have in the society. And for sure we are in Sweden, and that gives us some head start always. But we also had the possibility, and that's maybe thanks to the pandemic, if you might say so, to do like digital sessions like these on a global level, which gave us the possibility to reach out to others. So I think it's great to be able to talk about this from a company perspective, and none of us is like a high-ranked manager driving its own agenda or something. It's more like there's a unique chance for us to be able to talk about it.
Yeah. I can also say something very quickly. Today we had a session in Volvo, and we asked them, what can we do more about these topics? One of the responses we got online was, I respect people as they are. We don't spend much time about talking about diversity and inclusion because we don't think that sexual orientation plays any role in work. So because it's we don't discriminate people from each other because of that, somebody says. So super open person. But at the end, that person also said, but we still need to talk about it. We do. I mean, we live in this very progressive country, Sweden. We have seen your responses. Everybody thought their office was in fantastic condition. We feel that we are, at least the majority is in very comfortable conditions in this country. But you have seen our global results. 50% is still in the closet. Maybe that's not reflecting Sweden so much, but still around the world we have this situation going on. And as a progressive country, I think we should still keep on pushing and also pulling the others with us with this topic. That's why we need to talk about it. That's why I think this kind of times, these weeks, West Pride organization, these are having the parade on Saturday is very important, all these things. So you being here supporting us is also very valuable for us and the LGBT community. Martin? Anything?
No, I mean, it's, no, you said something.
No pressure, but...
You don't speak, so we speak. We can speak.
No, I mean, it's from, of course, here living in Sweden, from a general perspective, it's easier to be open. But it's like you said, we have to drive it maybe from here. Now we hear all the negative laws that are coming up in America. Like if you're a parent and you have a child that feels transgender, you can go in prison if you support your child's gender transition. Like if we think here, if that would happen in Sweden, that you have a child and you want to support your child, you would get in prison. I mean, we don't even imagine that it would be possible here. So we have such a privilege living in this country, but then still we see that our perception of having it so good is not always the case. And for those, even if it's now I don't know, was it 10% from the total result, was having a homophobic work environment. It seemed to be okay, but there should be nothing on the red side
Yeah.
where it was homophobic. And there we have to drive it a lot. Like, it's now if you go back to work, I guess just evaluate your work environment again if you go tomorrow, next week to the office after you heard the session, and think about, okay, how inclusive are my colleagues? Would it be nice to have maybe like an educational session with them? I would not say that I'm 100% inclusive. I have so much more to learn. Like, of course, I know now personally more from the LGBT plus community, but there are so many other ways to be inclusive. And I'm no expert in inclusiveness, so I guess it's hard to say I'm super inclusive. And it's always a learning, a journey. Just think about my experience to talk to non-binary people is not so much because I haven't talked to many. So I would say there I personally want to practice more. Like, just think about writing an email and do not use he or she. Then I did this practice once and it's so difficult you have a person in mind that maybe looks male or female and then use no gender referring pronouns. I found it super difficult. There are some practices that you can do to just broaden your horizon and inclusiveness on LGBTQ topics.
Okay, I think we thank
Yes,
these. Thank you very
thank you very much, Volvo Group. A round of applause. Och stanna jättegärna kvar här på biblioteket eller framför datorn. För om bara en halvtimme så kommer Lars Gårdfeldt hit och har salong over the rainbow. Missa inte det. Då kommer Tove Folkesson och Arne Nilsson hit. Tack igen.
Thank you.